Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are still waiting for a few people to join, and we're slightly earlier than the expected start time. So we're going to let them have that opportunity just to get set up and log into the webinar. In the meantime, while you're waiting, we'd love to hear from you. So you're able to use the Q&A section of the site in order to leave your comments and obviously your questions. But for now, if you're happy to actually log in and tell us whereabouts in the world are you from, we'd love to hear from you while we're waiting for everyone to join. Thank you so much for sharing. It looks like we have people from literally all over the world, including Kenya, South Africa, India, Qatar, and Lebanon even. So I see Omar is actually from Lebanon, living in the UAE, and so many more. Welcome to everybody. Today's webinar is going to be talking about generating more sales in a tough economic environment. This is incredibly topical at the moment, and it's something that all of us in the sales world are suffering right now. So we're going to get started, and just to let you know, the format of the webinar is going to be reasonably informal. We're going to kick off with a presentation, and we're going to allow quite a lot of time right at the end for Q&A. So please queue up your questions. You can add them into the window on your left-hand side of your screen unless you've reorganized it, but you're able to add that. If we don't answer you right away, it's probably because we're queuing it up right for the end of the session, or alternatively, we'll answer you post-fact of this actual webinar. The other thing you're going to need is a pen and paper. We have got some great resources for you, and you'll be able to take those down and get access to some great content after this webinar, but I'm sure there'll be a few notes that you'll want to take as we move through. So let's get started. By way of introduction, my name is Paul Slade, and I am the CEO here at a company called the CRM team. We're a Microsoft Gold partner, and we focus purely on customer experience. And that means we deal with Dynamics 365 and all of the incredible solutions that allow us to enable customer relationship management capabilities inside of all of our customers. Today's webinar is, as I mentioned, quite a simple process. We're going to look at the following agenda. Where are we now? 6 things that winning sales teams do in a tough economic environment, proof that it works, resources, and Q&A. And as I mentioned, there are a number of resources which we'll share right at the end, but the one that you're going to need to know about right now is the crmteam.com/webinar, and you'll be able to access this after the webinar for some great content, including extended articles on topics discussed today, as well as invitations to very specific demos that allow you access to incredible information that will really go deep on some of the topics that we talk about right now. So let's get started. It's important to note that whether we like it or not, we are really in the middle of what has been a decade-long slowdown in economic growth across the world. If any of you are unlucky enough, or maybe lucky enough, to have sold during the global economic recession in 2008, you will know how incredibly tough it was to win deals of all kinds during that time period. The reality is that right now, we're feeling that we're in exactly the same position as we were just in pre-2008 terms. Many economists are telling us that we are not facing a recession, and they're pointing to different areas in terms of their numbers and stats that show that we'll be okay. However, what we're seeing across all of the regions that we serve and the customers that we're currently assisting is not what the analysts are saying when they're acting in a positive manner. We're more aligned to what the analysts are saying when they're saying that actually we're about to face some of the toughest times that we ever have. Now, the problem with that is uncertainty, even if it's not completely true, equals volatility. And volatility makes sales incredibly tough. It means that growth slows down dramatically, and that in itself might feed the kinds of things that will relate to a recession. If you just look at what happened with the UK recently, and some of our customers were affected by that when the Brexit happened, and obviously the vote went against what many people thought would happen, even then, just the uncertainty meant that people pulled back on spending. What we've seen recently in South Africa is many companies actually going through retrenchment processes as they prepare for tough times. In some cases, up to 10% of their workforce has been retrenched. And that means that we're in a much tougher environment than many of us believe or would like to believe. The challenge there is that as we look at what's happening, it effectively becomes what we often call a domino effect. One bad decision, one bad situation in one country, and next thing, each of every other country around it is actually impacted directly. And that becomes hugely challenging for the rest of us to deal with, because as soon as that happens, the change inside of your customers is significant. So what does it really mean when we look at what happens inside of our customers' businesses? So from a practical point of view, what happens here is that they withdraw spending. They cut budgets and they make decisions in a substantially slower process. They tend to be much more considered and require a lot more information prior to making any purchase. In fact, what they really need to see is a real return on investment. They need to manage that risk and ideally mitigate it so much that they're able to actually put themselves in a position where every decision that they make is either guaranteed to improve their business or guaranteed to reduce cost. The one thing for certain here is that actually proving your value to a business is incredibly important. The other part of that is that we obviously know that customers will only typically then buy from people that they trust. So you have to be able to prove value and then also make sure that they trust you inside of the sales process. The challenge here, and this is something that we saw during the previous global recession, was that companies don't always react the way that they should. So let's have a look at some of the typical traits that a sales team actually go through or have when they react in the wrong way to these kinds of pressures. And we simply categorize that as they do more. And what I mean there is that they end up having more sales meetings, more campaigns, more call downs, more discounting, more cheap tactics. And all this equals is that people act with more desperation. And that includes the sales teams. And if you remember what I just said a few moments ago, people buy based on the obvious return on investment or the guaranteed, obviously, improvement in their business or reduction in cost, but they also buy from people that they trust. And it's very hard to trust someone that seems very desperate to make a sale. It seems like they're only looking out after their interest and not the customer's best interest. And therefore, all this activity, all this doing more actually results in less sales, less opportunities closed, and in the end, less revenue for your business. That means that sales teams will end up missing their targets. The challenge here is that in every recession, something that we've seen is that at the end of the recession or at the end of the downturn or the tough economic times, there are winners and there are losers. The teams who act like this and the do more thinking actually tend to be the losers. The question that you have to ask yourself right now is, will you be a winner or a loser at the end of this process? That's quite a tough question to answer because obviously we all want to be winners. But the challenge is that if we begin to act in a way that is in the do more kind of thinking, we're going to end up being in the losing category. And that's not something that we all want. I was also part of the sales teams at Microsoft previously during the previous recession that happened, so during 2008, 2009, and 2010, and had a process of actually trying to make my numbers during that exact time period. And that was incredibly tough. So what we ended up coming up with in the team structure at that time is 6 things that winning sales teams do in a tough economy. And these are really important. This is not something that we just stumbled upon, but this is rather based on our research and practice and time with customers. And even in many cases, asking customers why we lost a deal, or even better, why we won a deal. And really taking that information and relating it back into our teams and changing the way that we were approaching our deals during those tough economic times. And I'm going to share those with you right now. Here they are. I'm going to go into each of these in a lot more detail, but at a high level, they first of all quantify the impact of sales productivity. All great sales teams understand what it means to be really productive during the sales cycle and what the impact of changing that productivity status means. You heard me talk about more earlier on, and that's obviously something we need to be very conscious of because doing more does not necessarily mean we're being more productive. So that's the difference between being effective and efficient. The next is that they know the difference between antelope and field mice. I'll explain that when we get to that section. They value marketing and sales alignment, and they work incredibly hard to align those two teams. And we've got some great tactics that will allow you to do so. They also refine and simplify their standard operating procedures. And once again, this is definitely a trait that we see in every single sales team that wins during a tough economic environment. The fifth is that they make smarter decisions based on data, and they use machines to help them make those decisions. And the last is that they maximize what we call impact referrals. And we're going to share a couple of those with you in just one second. So let's look at the first one. The first point is sales productivity. And this sounds like a given. This sounds like something that everyone should just simply understand and start doing and aim to be more productive within their sales cycles. But if you actually think about how much time your sales teams are currently spending on their sales activities, you might be shocked to learn that it's substantially less than what you think they're spending on. So let's have a look at some of those stats. We actually had a look at some research that came out of PACE productivity. And what PACE found out is that typically sales reps only spend 22% of their entire week selling. That means that it's only really one day in a week that they're actively selling. If you look at this pie chart, it breaks down where salespeople are spending their time. And you're going to see they're spending a lot of time on planning and, sadly, on administration. The numbers are staggering. So if you look at it from this point of view, the opportunity for you as a sales leader is to understand that by changing the sales productivity matrix here and moving that pie chart just in incremental amounts will completely transform how much time your salespeople are actively spending actually selling. If you're doing the right things, it means that you can increase your sales time from 22% in the week to 33% in the week. That means that every single day a salesperson is able to spend 53 minutes more actively selling. Now that means you would have to reduce how much time was spent on planning. And that doesn't mean doing less planning. It means doing planning in a substantially better way with less time spent on that active planning. We'll share some of how that might happen later on. We also look at administration, and that's an area where obviously doing less admin, and we all know that salespeople hate admin anyway, is something that can give salespeople more time back in their sales. The interesting thing that you will see in this particular pie chart, though, is that travel time actually increases. And that's natural because the more time the rep is out on the road selling, the more time they're actively spending traveling. So that's a natural change in the total statistics. But we're definitely looking at the administration pie chart area and the planning pie chart area as areas that we can now transform that amount of time into rather using it for active sales. Now, there's a number of different tactics that can be used in order to actually enable that for you or for your sales teams. The reality is that technology is a significant part of enabling that change. We have an example of that, and this comes from some of our customers right now who are actively using Microsoft Dynamics 365 for sales. This is a typical Outlook environment, and you'll see that on the right-hand side of Outlook, without having to leave the application, Dynamics 365 has brought specific information related to this particular client in line right next to their emails. I can see the entire account record, how much time they've spent with us, what the total revenues are, etc., as well as get some prompts as to what I should probably be doing next. From a Microsoft perspective, artificial intelligence is used significantly to actually change the way salespeople behave. So rather than having to think about what is the next best action to take with this particular account, artificial intelligence is prompting or suggesting the next best action. And that is all happening in line, in this case, inside of the Outlook environment, helping salespeople be substantially more productive. But we all know that salespeople don't just spend their time in Outlook. They're also mobile. We saw that their travel time increases. So it's important to note that all of this kind of information is accessible by any device with an internet connection and a web browser, as well as via various applications on mobile devices. So you're able to pick up this information and work at the right pace and the right time with the right information from anywhere. And that's really important when it comes to sales productivity. No longer will the salesperson have to get back to the office to spend loads of time filling in various forms and actual call reports, etc., to update the pipeline, but rather they can do that on the fly, either in the meeting or as they're even walking back to their cars post-meeting. You would have maybe seen in the news that quite recently Microsoft acquired LinkedIn. And what we're seeing in many of our customers is that acquisition of LinkedIn means that more of that personal connection and business stakeholder connections information is coming through from LinkedIn into the Dynamics 365 environment, allowing salespeople to navigate the complex stakeholder relationships that exist within their customer base. And because that's all happening in one place, they're getting this insight without having to disappear somewhere else and go and sit down and do hours and hours of planning. They're getting that insight within the tool set that they currently have available to them right now. And that means, all in all, a substantial increase in sales productivity just from a technology point of view. Some of the other points we mentioned later on also deal with areas like standard operating procedures, and those are other areas that you can actually use to get better sales productivity. The next point was understanding the difference between antelope and field mice. Now, this is a story that was shared, I believe Tim Ferriss actually shared it in his recent book, but as the story goes, it actually relates very specifically to knowing which kinds of customers you should be targeting. Now, we're down in South Africa right now, and obviously if you go out on safari, you're able to see exactly the picture that we have up on screen behind this particular title. You're able to see lion. Lion are completely capable of killing a field mouse. They're able to kill very, very small animals and feed on those. But the caloric output, the amount of energy that the lion has to expend in order to kill that field mouse, actually is in excess of what he will get back from eating the field mouse. So it ends up being that the lion spends far too much of his energy with very, very little return. However, if the lion kills an antelope, they can feed on that for hours, even days, and actually live on that for a good 10 days. Now, what that means in your world is that you need to choose exactly which customers you should be dealing with. The important thing here is, in tough economic times, not to say yes to every single potential customer engagement, but rather to choose which customers you're specifically engaging with or need to be engaging with, and then sticking to those guidelines. It seems counterintuitive, and often you'll be tempted to chase down leads that you really shouldn't be spending your time on. The reality is that if you choose the right kinds of customers and exactly which kind of information make them the right kind of customers, and you're able to qualify them better, it means that the time you're spending on those customers is valuable and will be much more likely to convert in the long run. So make sure you know the difference between antelope and field mouse in your specific environment. The next thing to think about is aligning marketing and sales. And if you're choosing the right kind of customers to focus on, it means that your marketing and sales teams can be completely aligned as to which customers they should be targeting in order to generate leads and prospects, as well as which customers your sales team should be putting effort into. We've got a simple structure that actually allows us to see how well aligned our company is in terms of marketing and sales, as well as help our customers understand whether their marketing and sales teams are aligned. This is one of the resources I mentioned behind the login screen that we'll share again at the end of this particular presentation. But everything you see in blue is the responsibility of the marketing team, while everything you see in green is the responsibility of the sales team. In reality, sales pipelines are often simply thought about as just that, the sales team's pipeline. They talk about the leads that they're currently dealing with, they look at the conversion of those, they look at the opportunity and the standard sales process, as well as which of those they're currently winning, and then they report actively across those. The sad reality is that if you don't work closely with your marketing teams, it means the sales teams do a lot more work than they need to in order to close the business that they're currently closing. Working with your marketing team means that they're filling the top of the funnel. It means that they're getting visitors in who effectively, through a process, a structured process of marketing, actually become formal leads, and those leads become qualified by marketing rather than sales. Obviously, sales will reevaluate these leads and ensure that they're high quality and always feed that information back to marketing. But it does mean that even if the lead is high quality but perhaps not ready to buy, they're able to push that back into the marketing process so that the marketing team can deal with those leads at scale, warm them up, and hand them back over to sales when they're actually ready to go through the sales process and hopefully successfully convert and end up buying your product or service. So making sure that your marketing and sales teams are aligned is absolutely a critical requirement for a winning sales team in a tough economy. The next one is refining and simplifying your standard operating procedures. Quite often what happens is that successful salespeople are able to run their own sales process based on gut. And that gut comes from years and years of experience. But the challenge is that in every organization, you have salespeople with various levels of experience, and you cannot have everyone working on their own sales process because it becomes, first of all, impossible to report on, and second of all, impossible to forecast because we don't know where everyone is in their sales process. What we're not saying here is that you should double down on making sure that everyone has a very, very fixed, rigid sales process, but you do absolutely need a structured sales process that has certain gates that need to be passed through in order to make sure that that particular lead is at the right stage and later on that the opportunity is moving through the sales pipeline correctly. It means that you're able to report on that very actively. Just one example of this is what we use in our business, which is an acronym called BANT. It's B-A-N-T, which stands for budget, access to power, need, and timeline. In all of our engagements with customers, we typically try and establish those 4 areas as soon as possible before migrating them through the standard sales process, which means our standard operating procedure is to check if the customer has budget, to check if we're talking to the right person or people within the business, to check if they have a definitive need that they have identified and are able to articulate, and fourth, that they have a timeline associated to that particular process or purchase cycle. By understanding that, we're able to migrate that customer into the next stages of our sales process. Now, the reason you need to constantly refine and simplify the standard operating procedure is that if you're looking to try and drive sales productivity, efficiency, and effectiveness, you need to be taking out anything that is causing an ineffective process to happen. Any steps that are too long, any steps that require many checkboxes that simply could have been turned into a simple form or a one-step meeting. Those are the kinds of things you need to be looking for in your overall process. And by the way, this is thinking that you can apply across your entire business, an entire delivery chain, to make sure that you're always looking for a more cost-effective, more effective way of delivering to your customers and improving your overall business bottom line. The fifth one is making smarter decisions with data and machines. You have a lot of data within your business right now that can help you understand whether you're dealing with customers in the most effective way. You might not always believe it, but trust us, you have tons of data either inside of your Outlook environments, your Excel spreadsheets, or even your existing systems that will help you understand where you are with your customers right now. Within the Microsoft Dynamics 365 suite, there's the ability to use machine learning and artificial intelligence, which will give you much, much deeper insight into that data which exists within your business, as well as the ability to augment that view with data from third parties outside of your business. Here's a great example of that. This is Dynamics 365 for Customer Insights. It's one of the examples that we use inside of one of our customers that allows us a complete view of exactly where we are with various customers. If you look at these screens, you'll also see that the machine learning capability begins to give us some predictive analytics. It tells us what is the retention likelihood of a particular account. We're also able to use this information to tell us what is the propensity to convert. We're able to look at leads and based on historical information, use the machine learning capability in Dynamics 365 for Customer Insight to tell us whether or not there's a high likelihood of this lead converting or not, and whether it's an area that we should be spending our time. The same applies to the sales cycle, and it helps us understand how long we'll be in the sales cycle for, what the likelihood of winning this particular deal is, and where we need to be spending more of our time. What this means is that forecast accuracy increases. So by having the insight that we get from this kind of data, we're able to make sure the sales process is substantially more effective, but most importantly, that the forecast that we're able to project back into the rest of the business is accurate. And that is incredibly important, especially when you're considering demand planning and all of the other things that need to happen around the business during tough economic times. It's very important that all of those things are aligned. And this is the kind of information that gives us that kind of insight in order to make sure that we know exactly where we are and whether our forecast will be met or not. So the sixth one is to maximize impact referrals. Now, you're currently dealing with loads of existing customers. And as we spoke about earlier with the antelope and field mice, in many cases, your existing customers are going to be your best customers through the tough economic time. These are the customers that you can work very closely with. These are the ones that you've already made an impact on. And these are the people that will continue to buy from you as long as you continue to make an impact. Now, those people are able to share their experiences of your business with others. They're able to act as incredible customer references. They're able to give you information that you can put up on your website, whether that's quotes or information about what you've done inside of their business. And also, they're able to act as great referrals within the network that they work within. The reason we call them impact referrals is because they're not just a positive recommendation. It's not someone saying, hey, you should work with the CRM team, they're great. It's rather someone that's saying, hey, you should work with the CRM team, look at the impact that they had on our business, and then they're able to quantify that at the end. So it's quite important for you to try and figure out the starting point with every single customer, understand where they were when they first bought your product, and then what happened once you completed the implementation of that product or service within their business, and track that over a period of time to see what kind of impact you really have on their business and whether or not you're able to use that information to drive other sales in other areas of your market. We have a great example of that. This is a real example of a customer of ours who's currently based in the UK. It's a company called Vitality. And in this particular instance, it's the life insurance team. We started working with them just over 2 years ago, and we're able to show a marked and measured impact on their business thanks to the technology and the simplification of the standard operating procedures that we've been able to put in. This is a team that has actively embodied the 6 principles we've just spoken about and constantly refined their approach to make sure that they're doing the best possible work that they can do within the market that they currently serve. Let's have a look at some of the stats that relate to their business. From when we first engaged with them, this particular company saw an 87% year-on-year growth in sales. they have directly attributed this to the solution that was implemented into their business. As an example, when they first received leads prior to implementing the solution, it used to take them about 24 hours to action that lead. After implementing the solution, they're able to call the lead down in just under 5 minutes. This is an incredible turnaround, and if you know anything about the half-life of leads and the risk that you face by leaving a lead cold within your pipeline for too long, you'll see that just simplifying one of those areas can have a direct impact on sales. They obviously have loads and loads of areas of improvement they've undertaken over the last 2 years in order to achieve this, but an 87% year-on-year growth in sales in a market that was actively in pain or declining is absolutely incredible. When we first started engaging with them, that particular team only contributed 3% to the total turnover of the overall business within the UK. When we did a secondary measure, we were able to prove that they now contribute 7% to the total revenue of that particular business. And currently, they're on track to contribute 10% to the overall business unit. That's an incredible change in where they were to where they are. And we see the way that they think right now as a basis for enabling even further positive impact inside of their business. It's these statistics and it's that information from this particular team that we use in impact referral sales so that we can show our other potential customers exactly what kind of impact we can have with the Dynamics 365 solution in their business. This is exactly the kind of information that you need to be collecting on your customers to make sure that you understand what the return could be and how you can actually use that in impact referral sales. In many instances, if I look at some of the businesses that are actively on the webinar today, you might not understand exactly how you would measure the return on investment. But let me be clear, no matter what you do, whether you're walking people's dogs or managing a cleaning service or growing a massive enterprise, all of these things that you do have an impact on someone's life, and ideally it's a positive impact. And if you can quantify that to some degree, you're able to make sure that you can actually use that in an impact sales environment. So those are the six things that winning sales teams do in a tough economic environment. Right now, we're going to look at some of the questions that came in and address the Q&A, but we also promised to give you some free resources. And here are the links that you can use to get hold of those resources. The first one is the crmteam.com/webinar, and that is information dedicated to this particular webinar, and it goes deeper on a number of the different subjects that we listed today. The next is Microsoft's own Dynamics 365 site. It is microsoft.com/Dynamics 365, and it has a wealth of information around the different solutions that encompass Dynamics 365, and it has lots of information and video clips that you can watch to learn more. And the third is our primary website, the crmteam.com, where you can get loads of information around the solutions that we offer, the customers that we currently work with, and also learn more from our blog and articles. So right now, let's open up to the Q&A and see what it is that we have available to us. Okay, so the first question we're having a look here at is from Mitesh. And Mitesh has asked if it's possible to link an IVR system to Dynamics 365. And for those of you who don't know, IVR is effectively a telephony system. And absolutely, Mitesh, you're able to connect this, your IVR systems to Dynamics 365. In fact, there's a number of existing pre-built connectors that enable that process for you. In the Microsoft suite, by the way, Skype for Business is automatically integrated into Dynamics 365, which means that you can click to dial from within the application, dial out onto Skype, and actually make those particular calls, and even receive calls and track those directly into the application itself, so that you have a complete history of every phone call and every activity that you've had with that particular customer. You're obviously able to use other applications as well, and those work incredibly well, even in a call center environment, and we've managed a number of those over the years. So we'd be happy to connect with you further and give you more information if you have a specific IVR in mind for your particular business. If we have a look at the next question. The next question is it not better to cut the sales force and automate your processes? Or can you automate and retain your sales force numbers and make a profit? This is an incredible, incredible question. And in fact, in many instances, when we have actually spent time with companies, they've often become a little bit concerned about what happens to the existing headcount in their business. In others, they're actively downsizing anyway and are looking for a way of maintaining their ability to achieve their overall targets. Now, what I find quite interesting in this process is that it really depends on your business and the industry that you're in, as well as the growth cycle of that industry and the business itself. Now, the key is, regardless of how good your sales team is, you should absolutely be looking to automate specific processes aligned with your standard operating procedures. And the Dynamics 365 workflow process enables that within your business. It can obviously prompt a salesperson to take certain action, or it can trigger certain things. For example, it can trigger out an automatic email to a customer at a certain point in the sales cycle, which, if you go back to the first point that we had around productivity, is absolutely something you want to be driving, because workflow enables your salespeople to be substantially more productive, which means more time selling and the ability to actually win more deals. If that means that you take your overall sales teams and look at your weakest performers and potentially are able to remove those people from the team because the automation has taken over and you're able to still achieve your targets, it just means that you either have more budget for hiring more great sales performers, or alternatively more budget to spend on marketing so that your marketing and sales alignment becomes even stronger. There's another great question regarding Excel. And we always joke that Excel is one of the biggest CRM systems around. Everyone tends to, when they're starting their journey, actually punch loads of information back into Excel so that they can actually manage their customer statuses. And by the way, Excel is a great tool to use when you're starting your business and you're beginning that CRM journey. But over a period of time, you'll find that it lacks a number of things. First of all, it lacks the ability to automate your processes, so it can't automatically trigger different actions as a result. It also means that it doesn't have the ability to prompt your sales teams to take certain actions through the process, which means you lose that ability to drive efficiency. And then besides that, you'll always hear those kinds of comments like, who's updated the master spreadsheet last? Can everyone please log out so that I can make my changes, etc.? It means that some of the security around it is also something that is a bit dubious. It makes a lot of sense to take that Excel information and use the standard importability into Dynamics 365, which is a pre-built template, which allows you to just simply take that Excel information, migrate it into Dynamics 365, and begin actively managing your sales pipeline within a tool that is absolutely designed to help you improve your productivity in that process. By the way, the other thing to remember there is that if you love Excel, you're still able to extract data, depending on your security levels within the system, out of Dynamics 365 into Excel and manipulate that information to create the reports that you might know and love. However, you probably will find you don't always need to do that. On top of Dynamics 365 is the most incredible reporting engine. It actually allows you to report within the tool and give you actionable insight, things that you can drill directly down into, click on, and take an action. And it also feeds Power BI. So if you want to aggregate loads of different data across different systems and pull it into one place, you're able to do that inside of the Power BI application. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question is from Neil. And Neil's question is Dynamics 365 available as part of the Office 365 Business Premium account? Neil, that's a great question. And the first thing to note is that Dynamics 365 is not built as part of Office 365. However, they are built to work completely together. They're built on top of the same common data model as well, which means that the structures that you're currently leveraging in Office 365 are exactly the same structures that Dynamics 365 would leverage. It is an additional license purchase, and that really depends on your current licensing mechanism. And we'll be happy to help guide you through the process, because licensing in some instances can feel a little bit complex. So if you want to drop us a line after this via the link that we shared earlier on, please do so, and we can advise you based on your specific requirement. You'll also see that on the Dynamics website itself, there is pricing options that is relevant to your region and your current status in terms of your Office 365 subscription. But bear in mind that these things work incredibly well together, and it's absolutely the thing that our customers value almost the most when you ask them what do they love most about the Dynamics 365 environments. Okay, let's have a look at any other questions that are coming in right now. All right, so the next question that we have is related to using Dynamics 365 in Outlook. In the past, this was always done via an add-on. And right now, you're able to very simply enable the Dynamics 365 capability inside of your Outlook environment. Obviously, you would need the license to be in existence first. But once you do so, it enables you to use the standard Outlook capabilities, for example, taking an email, dragging and dropping that on top of the contact section, and automatically creating a contact in Outlook. But at the same time, once you've connected this into Dynamics 365, it is able to automatically create a contact inside of your CRM system. And why that's so important is, once again, if we look at the admin that salespeople have to go through on a daily basis, having to go into a separate system to capture loads of information around a brand new contact or a company that they've just started dealing with is far too intensive. So using this kind of an add-on, you can just simply track an email into the CRM system and automatically go and create the customer contact record, and very easily go and create a company record against that as well. So once again, it's just a great example of where the productivity thinking from the Microsoft R&D teams is absolutely coming through into the application stack itself. And a lot of this capability also exists on your mobile device when you're using the app. Any of the emails that you're responding to and interacting with via the app are automatically tracked in CRM, as well as the outgoing information. You no longer have to copy the email and paste it into your CRM system. You just simply work from within this application, and automatically the emails that are incoming and outgoing are all tracked in one place. Great, let's have a look at any of the other questions coming in. Okay, there has been some conversation around the different editions inside of Dynamics 365. Now, it's probably worthwhile visiting the websites that I've mentioned in terms of the resources to get a better understanding of this. But there are two primary versions that Dynamics 365 comes in. The one that has not yet released officially, which is related to the question I've just been asked, is around the business edition. The business edition will be specific to smaller businesses. It is designed to assist them in marketing, sales, and even the finance elements of running a business. That is a very specific application stack, and it is something that more information will be available on as the next couple of weeks go by. But the other version is more focused on enterprise. And you'll find a lot of that information on the Dynamics website. You'll see that it is broken down by workload, for example, sales, so Dynamics 365 for sales, etc. Dig into each of those as it makes sense to you. But bear in mind that a one license fee can enable all of those different options for you based on your organizational size and the kinds of roles that your users would actually be fulfilling. So it's completely up to you as to how you would license that, and completely up to the business case or the use case that you have as to which edition would suit you best. If you need assistance in guiding you through that process, we would obviously be very happy to help you at any point in time. Okay. So the next big question is around data centers. And Microsoft Dynamics 365 really lives in the Microsoft data center structure, which is all over the world. It's important to note that these data centers are state-of-the-art. We've had so many customers come and have a chat to us and ask us about whether or not the ISO standards are compliant, et cetera, et cetera. And when we point them to the trust center for Dynamics data center, or for at least the Microsoft data centers, you can see that so much of this work has been done by the Microsoft teams to ensure these data centers are really secure and incredibly compliant. And because of their locations, and by the way, we even see brand new data centers going into South Africa in 2018, which is a huge, huge announcement. Microsoft will be the first major vendor with data centers in Africa to service the African continent. And when you see how well they're distributed around the rest of the world as well, you'll know that the kind of performance that you would get for your application is absolutely brilliant, as well as the ability to ensure that it's always safe, always secure, and that someone else is helping worry about your uptime. We've seen this in the last 2 years, where there was an issue in one of the data centers and our customers felt zero impact. They literally failed over to a secondary data center and continued to work. which is absolutely a very, very powerful thought process when it comes to staying really active inside of your business and making sure that you don't have any downtime. The next question is also from Neil, and this is related to LinkedIn and Dynamics CRM integration. Neil, this is a great one. And when Microsoft announced the acquisition of LinkedIn, I think in our office, we got really excited about this because we've actively used Sales Navigator for LinkedIn for a number of years now. And what we see is that there's an announcement that was recently made around what happens with LinkedIn data inside of Dynamics CRM. So inside of our environment, a personal example is that I was going to a meeting the other day, and I knew one of the stakeholders. It was a very early stage meeting, and someone had referred them to us and said, look, you really have to chat to these people. But I saw that they actually invited loads of other people to attend. And because of the LinkedIn integration into Dynamics 365, I was automatically able to see all of these people and who they were attending my meeting, what the structure of that particular team was, and who I was connected to and who I was connected via, for example. So my business partner was actually connected directly to two of the other individuals who were in that meeting. I was able to go and speak to him and understand who they were and what their backgrounds were. And that completely transformed the kind of engagement that I was about to have from a sales point of view. We've also seen quite a few recent announcements from Microsoft regarding the LinkedIn integration. And I'd be very happy to send you one of those particular videos where they actually show how LinkedIn and Dynamics 365 work really well together, especially when it comes to sharing sales content. You're able to push out sales content to the person who requested it and then see who else in that organization has opened that sales content, what role they are inside of the business, and how long they spent on that information, which is a game changer. Okay, I'm having a look at the next question, which is once again from Mitesh. And this is how to win a Dynamics 365 deal for less than 20 or 25 users. So Mitesh, we can absolutely have a discussion around that. My suggestion is that we have a conversation separate to this webinar and go into a bit more detail around how to go and do that. But remember, it's always about adding business value. And if you can figure out what the business value is and ensure that you are delivering a real return on investment for that particular company, then you're going to be put in a position where you can prove that the application makes sense to implement and show them what the real impact on their business is. And as I said, look to actually have a customer that is an impact reference. So someone that can actually then be able to go and refer you into other areas of their connections and their network. But the starting point is always making sure the business case makes sense. So we can go into a bit more detail on that if you like, but reach out to me separate from this particular webinar and we can go into that detail. Okay, so there are quite a few other questions. I think that they are actually aligned to some of the answers we've already given and some of the content we've already shared, as well as some of the questions that can be easily addressed by visiting the resources page that we mentioned. So the crmteam.com/webinar, that is a link that you can dig into, and we'll have loads of specific information related to this webinar, as well as some of the concepts in a lot more detail. And as I mentioned, you're obviously always welcome to reach out to us through our website and get in touch. And we'd love to have a chat to you about your particular challenges, the sales challenges you're currently dealing with, and also obviously make sure that we can add value in any way possible. Let me just make one more pass and make sure that there are no other questions that we haven't addressed as yet. Okay, that is perfect. Looks like we're all good. And the final one is, will this be available as a session later on? Absolutely. So if you only joined the session a bit later on and didn't see any of the end slides, the session will be recorded or has been recorded and will be available on demand for you to watch post this. So please do go and reference that as well and hopefully get some value from the content. And post this, we'd love to hear from you. So please reach out at any point in time. My name is Paul Slade, and as I mentioned, I'm the CEO here at the CRM team. Would love to chat to you post the webinar. Thank you for your time today.